I'm Lynn Doyle, and I want to hear what you think about Brett Favre and his decision not only to unretire, but also his team's reluctance to have him return. What's up with that? If you were management, what would you do? Would you want him back, particularly after the great season he had last year? Or at age 38, would you say it's time to go with the young blood? And what about Brett? Is he wrong to expect to return? Or do you think he has a right to change his mind about retirement? And here's one for you. If Green Bay doesn't want him, who will? Tell us what you think about any and all of that by giving us a call. The telephone lines are open now. We are live here on CN8. It is toll-free from wherever you are watching all over the country. You can also email me or take our web poll at cn8.tv. Lots of different ways for you to be interactive with us. We're going to hear from our panel in just a moment, and boy, is it a good one. It includes Greg Murphy, who, as you know, is our Emmy Award-winning host of CN8's Out of Bounds. It's seen here live at 7 o'clock each night. Gary Cobb, who is a sports journalist and a former NFL player. Christopher Cabott, who is a certified NFLPA agent as well as an entertainment and sports attorney. And Carlos Bradley, who's also a former NFL player as well as one of Philadelphia's best fitness experts. We're going to take the telephone calls here in the studio in just a minute, but first, I got to open it up to my panel. They are about to burst. Go ahead, guys, jump in. Tell me what you think. Who thinks that Brett Favre should be able to come back and play as though nothing ever happened? Anybody?
Absolutely. I do. Yeah? I do. Well, I think if he wants to play football, he should be able to play football. And because of the way the NFL rules work, he has to play football in Green Bay, or they have to release him, or they have to trade him. I use the girlfriend analogy, too, that like Katie's using, but I say it's like you break up with a girl because you don't want to date her anymore, but you don't want her dating anybody else either. and it's just, you can't have it both ways.
I'm sure that doesn't apply to any of the men here.
They created this monster, though, with Brett Favre. I mean, for years, nobody could criticize Brett Favre. He throws an interception. Oh, what a great interception. Brett Favre is being Brett Favre, you know. And he got to the point where he was bigger than the team, and now it's come back to bite them. The guy's ego is out of control. He is a monster. I don't blame him for trading him.
Right.
I would get him out of there.
She said Green Bay is all about loyalty. Well, I mean, I think Brett's being disrespectful to the fans, the team, his teammates. He made a decision. He thought it out. He went over it. Stick by your decision. But now you're dragging everybody through the mud. Now you're taking the fans. They got to decide which side they want to be on. Management is asking you to leave and to come back. You made a decision. Move on with your life. Do something else. Should he be allowed to come back? Yes, but he thought it out. He went through the whole crying thing, and now they want to retire his jersey. I think the second game. Yeah. Do you retire it? He comes back. What do
they
you
might retire it with him in it. Wait a second, I'm not quite done yet.
Exactly.
Give me that jersey
it's not so
back.
much a question of whether he should come back, but it's that he can come back. He's under contract. He retired. He submitted his reinstatement. Now the commissioner has to make a decision to grant it or not. Commissioner Goodell is making a smart decision here. He's trying to let the team and Brett Favre work this out together. It's a publicly owned team. There are actually 9,000 plus shareholders that own the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
Very much divided. And we know how the fans feel about Brett Favre. G talked about he was beyond criticism for years. The situation that I think you'll eventually see unfold here is the Packers are going to bring him in. Mark Murphy said he's welcome back. Coach McCarthy said he's welcome back. Brett's agent has said he could be back as early as Friday. And what you're going to see is where sports comes into play. You're going to see Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre compete for the position.
I want Chris to kind of address something for us, and that is the fact that he has this contract. It was my understanding in business that once you retire, you know, the contract comes to an end. So why is that still an issue?
Lynn, here's why it's still an issue. Brett is signed through 2010. He retires. He then applies for reinstatement.
But let's stop right there. He retires. Doesn't that get Green Bay off the hook? Why would he still be under contract?
The contract still lasts. The NFLPA collective bargaining agreement allows a player to retire and gives them opportunities to come back with the contract in place.
Because you know what? I'd like to retire from June to September.
Now you're on to something.
And then come back when the weather changes.
But here's the really interesting point. Green Bay is going to have to make a very quick decision. Commissioner Goodell is eventually going to approve this reinstatement. Green Bay then has 24 hours to either cut Brett Favre or put him on the active roster, meaning they have to drop someone else. At that point, they can trade him.
Whew. So someone could get dropped if he comes back.
Absolutely. But But
You don't want your ex-girlfriend dating
not only
anybody
that,
else.
but Green Bay's at risk here is the fact that if Brett were to come back and they play him and he retires again and Aaron Rodgers leaves in free agency at the end of his contract, they could be in a position without a quarterback.
No quarterback.
Thank you.
They don't ever change their mind.
No, they never change.
I don't think it's a money issue for Brett Favre. He was upset because he was somewhat pushed out at the end of last season. He was almost pushed into retirement, and the Packers, their first response was, we made a decision when Brett retired that we were going to move on without him, and that's the future of our team.
Certainly no win for Aaron Rodgers, too.
Well, I think that's what we're going to see the Packers do, have them both compete for the job. And I know a lot of folks disagree with that, but really it puts the Packers in the best position for two reasons. One, you're going to get to see what Aaron Rodgers is made of. Two, we all know Brett Favre is going to have trade value, even through preseason. That's a give-me. There's a number of teams in the league that could use him, and they could still get a good trade for him.
I think they bring him back, and they definitely trade him. Yeah. I think he has to go. I don't even think it'll be a competition. I think the Packers want to move on. I think they're going to move on, and I think they're going to see what they can get for Brett Favre.
But earlier we were talking about the impact that would have on the fans and the distraction that it would have on the team. If he comes back and they instantly trade him, won't that defeat both purposes on both fronts? I mean, the fans will be upset, at least some of them, and the team will still have a distraction.
Yeah, but the team can then say we had no other choice, and they're right. And the fans will understand that. You're right. You didn't have a choice. You had to let him go. He forced your hand, and that's what happened. But I want to go back to Chris's point real quick, because it's two good points. That could happen if they compete. Yeah, you could show Brett Favre, show he's got some trade value, but what you didn't mention was, what if Brett Favre wins the job? If Brett Favre wins the job, then you're setting yourself up for years and years of not having a quarterback.
I don't think it'll be long enough to win the job.
I agree.
Don't forget this. The Packers, I really believe, on draft day had this in mind. They drafted two quarterbacks. If he comes back and plays well and they go to a Super Bowl, they're happy. It's title town again. And if they lose Aaron Rodgers, they have two more waiting in the wings. Not his season.
The whole situation, he brought it on himself.
Well, let me ask you guys this. We've kind of danced around it all night and talked about it during the break, but if this wasn't Brett Favre, would we be doing this show?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. Absolutely. We talked about this at the break. This is Green Bay. You have to look at, when you talk about Brett has a history of throwing a lot of interceptions, in most markets he would have been pulled. Yep. In the 2004 presidential election, he received votes for president. I mean, it's a double-edged sword here when you look at that.
Well, Well, I don't agree that his legacy will be tarnished, because we talked about this in the break as well. I mean, Joe Montana spent a miraculous career in San Francisco. Then he retired. Then he wanted back in, and he went to Kansas City. And we remember his Kansas City time as not being successful, but he's still the greatest quarterback ever.
But when you talk about him being the greatest quarterback, you don't play.
No, you remember him as a 49er.
You don't put that into play. Kansas City, right?